Is this season a failure if Lamar loses Sunday, RC?
Yes, absolutely a failure. Lamar Jackson is now only judged by championships. And I think it's a failure for many reasons. One, it's a failure because he has the best team. And part of him being on the best team is that defense, is the run game, is Todd Monken that's been added. Also some of the pieces on the outside, but it's Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is in the conversation with Patrick Mahomes for best player in the entire world. But what do the best players do to become great? They show up in the biggest moments. This is the biggest moment of Lamar Jackson's entire career. And let's be real, Lamar Jackson is playing for more than himself. And I know we've had the Doug Williams win Super Bowls, Patrick Mahomes, we've had the Russell Wilsons, but Lamar Jackson is different from all of them. Lamar Jackson has gone against the status quo, gone against the familiar since the moment he was drafted by not choosing an agent and staying with his mother, allowing her to be part of his representation by the hair he wears, by the way he talks, by the way he plays. This is bigger than Doug Williams. When John Harbaugh sat on the sideline next to Lamar Jackson during his first run as an MVP and said, do you know how many kids are going to go buy number 8 jerseys because of you? Because they look like you, because they talk like you, because they come from places that you came from, and he never switched up. He never became anything but Lamar Jackson. He never changed his style of play. He just improved on it. He never changed the way that he directed or he behaved in press conferences. He just improved on it. And he never changed the way that he led a locker room. He just improved on it. But it stayed authentically Lamar Jackson. And for that reason, when he wins or when he loses, the conversation is about so much bigger than just who he is as a player. So this is imperative that Lamar Jackson not only wins this game, but he wins the Super Bowl, because it's an entire culture on the back of that jersey, not just the name Jackson.
It's imperative for several reasons. I'll piggyback off of everything you said first by the player part. Lamar Jackson, if he loses to the Kansas City Chiefs this weekend and the Patrick Mahomes, here's what we're going to be saying about him next month when award winners are presented. He's a 2-time NFL MVP. 2 times he finished with the AFC's best record, and he's got 2 playoff wins. That's what we're going to be saying about him. That's number 1. Here's number 2, what we're going to be saying about him. There are 9 quarterbacks thus far who've won 2 or more NFL MVPs. Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Brett Favre, Johnny Unitas, Joe Montana, Steve Young, Kurt Warner, and Patrick Mahomes. Every single one of them have won a Super Bowl championship. He would be the only one who hasn't. So when we look at it from that perspective, there is no question that if he does not win this Sunday, as the number 1 seed in the AFC, playing on clearly the best team and having the best record and home field advantage in the AFC playoffs, it is going to presumably be a failure.
S.A., let me ask you this, because obviously you were a columnist for many years and you know how to make headlines, Stephen A. Smith.
Yes, he does.
Bigger storyline. Do you think it's Lamar winning his first Super Bowl? And obviously we know all the narratives. We talked about it earlier, all the critics. Or the Detroit Lions and just the franchise and the city and the history there?
Well, I think outside of Detroit, it's Lamar in the city of Detroit and the outskirts in Michigan. Obviously, it would be the Detroit Lions. When you've only had 1 playoff win since 1957 coming into these playoffs, there's no question it means everything to that city, to that locale, no doubt about that. But if you think about Lamar Jackson, all I would ask the audience to do is hearken back to everything that Ryan Clark alluded to, who he is and what he represents. And last time I checked, there's millions upon millions of black people outside of Detroit in the state of Michigan. And what Lamar Jackson would mean to the culture, what him becoming a champion would mean to the culture, resonates far, far, far more significantly than the Detroit Lions winning a Super Bowl championship.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think when you look at Lamar Jackson and the storylines that he's built around him, we're talking about a dude that won a Heisman. This is a guy who, like Chris says, we're assuming or is the presumptive MVP. He's made headlines himself with his play since he stepped on the campus at Louisville. But the detractors, right, and the people who control the narratives, they've written those stories. They've written those headlines. And so those headlines get to skew as negatively or as positively as the perception of the people who are writing them, the perception of the people who are being asked the questions every day on TV. And they're going to focus on what they want to focus on. And so that's why, to me, once Lamar Jackson wins this, there's no more negativity. But until he wins it, there will continue to be stories written or stories told about how you can't get it done being who he is. And I think, to me, that's the narrative I want him to correct more than any.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You guys hit the nail on the head. I mean, a win for Lamar Jackson in the Super Bowl, it ends the debate on whether or not he's great. The other thing that it does is it gives us something to talk about for the next decade in terms of Pat Mahomes actually having a true rival.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When we talk about Patrick Mahomes, we're not talking about him in comparison to any of his contemporaries. We talk about him with the all-time greats, Joe Montana, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady. But Lamar actually winning it, being one ring off of Lamar, of Pat Mahomes' count, but then also having the same amount of MVPs to match Mahomes, then all of a sudden we can have that Manning and Brady debate. I know a lot of people want that to be Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen.
They just play a lot.
It ain't.
Yeah, they just play a lot.
They play a lot, and Patrick Mahomes beats Josh Allen when it matters most. But when it comes to Lamar Jackson, it gives us a true rival for Patrick Mahomes, and that just makes it spicier for the NFL. He ain't got one right now.
Who's more likely to win on the road Sunday?
The Lions. And I'm not going to hesitate on that. When you think about this team and what Dan Campbell has been able to create, we often go back to what he said in his opening press conference and about biting knees and getting knocked down and getting back up. What we overlook is how well coached this team is, how much belief he had in the team that only won 3 games in its first year, that started its second year 1-6, to continue to go forward on 4th down, to continue to push and be behind them. And now this team believes in themselves. And also think about their coordinators. Offensively, Ben Johnson. Defensively, Aaron Glenn. The things that they've been able to do to use every piece of that roster that Brad Holmes has built to be the best they could possibly be. And now, on paper, matching up against the San Francisco 49ers, it doesn't look good. San Francisco 49ers, extremely explosive in the pass game. Detroit Lions, they don't stop that very well. But going on the road, being able to run the ball with Jahmyr Gibbs, being able to run the ball with David Montgomery, and Jared Goff, who, believe it or not, is a better quarterback than Brock Purdy. Yes, I said it. Bump the stats. Bump what you think. Bump the MVP conversation. Jared Goff is a better quarterback than Brock Purdy. And on the other side of that, the only reason we're even talking about the AFC Championship being a game is because Patrick Mahomes plays for the Kansas City Chiefs. The Baltimore Ravens have been so dominant this year that it shouldn't be a conversation. The only reason it is because, in my opinion, the best quarterback to ever play the game is the quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs.
And that's why I have to go with the Kansas City Chiefs reluctantly, right? Because experience matters, right? And he's been in these big games. And you talk about Patrick Mahomes, kind of slaying the dragon last week when you talk about going to Orchard Park, one of the most hostile environments. And I know M&T Bank Stadium is going to be rocking, but it's going to be, similar to what he experienced last week. On the road, you talk about Andy Reid and his ability to find out and exploit the weaknesses in defenses last week, deciding, to attack the linebackers, knowing what the situation was with A.J. Klein, and his ability. And so he attacked him with Travis Kelce. But also Steve Spagnuolo, because I've seen in recent years, even when he went all the way back when he defeated the greatest show of all time, when you think about what he did to New England Patriots, even when his teams aren't good, he's a good big game coordinator, right? So I know he's going to have something for Lamar Jackson, and I get nervous sometimes that Lamar could always revert to what he was and start using his athleticism. The evolution of Lamar Jackson this year has been that he's been able to buy time and use his legs to throw the ball down the field and use his legs only when it's the last resort. That's what kept him healthy. That's why he's in this position. That's why this team is in this position, is because he's been healthy. I get nervous that Patrick Mahomes always finds a way, right? And you talk about, Tom Brady lost at times during his run, but you were surprised. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Patrick Mahomes finds a way to figure it out, right? You think about guys getting tight, right? The expectations and all the pressure is on the Baltimore Ravens. They're the best team with the MVP, with the #1 defense left in these playoffs. They should win. They're supposed to win. But we know the best team doesn't always win. You just have to be better than that team that day. And I think that's the point you're making with the Lions, because we both know that all around that San Francisco's a better team.
Yep.
But the better team doesn't always win. And how often do we get, two number one teams or number one seeds going against each other? Somebody usually, chokes. And, I just hope it's not the Ravens. But if I had to pick a team that it would be, I would say, arguably, the best generational talent that we've seen in a long time. I don't put Patrick Mahomes in that same discussion that you guys put, because 3 isn't 5. I think he needs still a lot more work to get done. But I don't doubt this man. I've doubted him before, and I've come up on the wrong side of that.
Well, listen, if we're going to say what we've said about Lamar Jackson, it's not just about Patrick Mahomes. It's how Lamar Jackson rises to the occasion.
True.
And every
Correct.
nugget of adversity that has been thrown his way throughout his life and his career, he's responded in stellar fashion for the most part. And so for me, I'm looking at Baltimore, and I expect them to win that game, even though I know that Patrick Mahomes is that dude. I'm going to side with RC here with the Detroit Lions. Do you know that the Detroit Lions are the only team that hasn't given up 70 rushing yards in a game this season? It's the only team that hasn't done that. Now, I'm thinking about the San Francisco 49ers, and I understand Kyle Shanahan and his play calling, and I get the fact that Ayuk is there and Kittle is there. We're hoping that Deebo Samuel's going to be ready to roll after injuring that shoulder last weekend, and we get that, and that's going to be necessary. But a lot of their success, obviously, is predicated and it rides on Christian McCaffrey. Not just running the football, but out of the backfield and some of the things that he can do. We accept that. We understand that. But if you could find a way to neutralize the running game of San Francisco, which Detroit has been able to do effectively throughout this season, then that's going to be a plus for you. So I look at it from that perspective. I also agree with RC that Jared Goff is a better quarterback this year than Brock Purdy. If you're looking and you're watching the games and you're looking at Jared Goff play the game of football, we cannot ignore what we've seen this brother do. Then we've got to take into account they've got not one but two running backs with over 900 yards rushing and 10 touchdowns this season in Montgomery and Gibbs. So I'm looking at it from that perspective and what they bring to the table. I'm looking at Laporta, who I didn't even expect to play because he got hurt at the tail end of the regular season, but he's been in both of these playoff games. I'm looking at him. I'm looking at Jameson Williams. Of course, I'm looking at Amon-Ra St. Brown. And they've got a multitude of weapons to make things happen offensively. I don't like what I've been seeing from San Francisco defensively over the last several weeks. I think they've bent a little bit too much. They may not have broken, but they bent a little bit too much. And then last nugget of information that I think both of y'all will be interested in. Okay? Detroit faces a Niners team that's 5-0 in home playoff games under Kyle Shanahan. You're going to get the impression that somehow, some way that's going to come to the end. They've lost 13 straight road games to San Francisco. How much longer is that going to last? And last but not least, they've lost 11 straight road playoff games. Ironically, the last playoff game on the road that the Detroit Lions have won was against San Francisco in 1957. I think at some point that's going to come to an end. The Detroit Lions, I give a better chance than the Kansas City Chiefs.
Who do you trust more Sunday? Is it Goff?
Sunday.
Sunday.
Just
Sunday in that little NFC Championship game. Are you going Jared Goff or Purdy?
Jared Goff is the better quarterback.
Okay.
Who do I trust more on Sunday, which is the question? I'm going to go with Brock Purdy because you talk about home cooking. He got over the hump last week, having a bad performance, able to come back and lead his first game-winning drive. I feel like he's going to be comfortable, right? I don't worry about Jared Goff because he showed that he's big time. He's taken a team to the Super Bowl before, so he's been on big stages. What I get concerned with is this the first time that the others, the role players come in and feel a little bit tight because they've been having home cooking in the confines of, Ford Field. Now they're going across the country, which is always difficult, and they're playing in a hostile environment. They won't be able to lean on the things that they've been able to lean on, like being able to make checks and not having to go on a silent count and all those things. So if you ask me what team do I trust more, I got to go with the home team simply because the Lions team are so young and so new to success that I think they may struggle a bit early on until they get their sea legs under them. Jared Goff has struggled under pressure, and I think maybe they find a way to get pressure on him.
Well, one of the things y'all have played a role in teaching me is that if you have a running game, if your defense travels and your running game travels, then obviously that ails a lot of problems that may plague you. And when I look at the Detroit Lions and I think about that duo at the running back spot in Montgomery and Gibbs, and then I take into account Jared Goff, 71% completions, 10 touchdowns, just 1 interception in play action. I'm thinking about what they can do against the San Francisco 49ers defense that's been prone or surrender to some degree when you utilize play action effectively. So I'm looking at it from that standpoint. I'm also looking at all the pressure being on the San Francisco 49ers. I'm going to trust Goff more than I'm going to trust Purdy in this situation. I think that if the San Francisco 49ers pull this out, it will be because of the greatness of Christian McCaffrey and, of course, Deebo Samuel. I think that's what it will require in order for them to pull something off. But I'm just of the mindset that the pressure is on San Francisco. You think the pressure's on the Baltimore Ravens as the #1 seed. How about Kyle Shanahan keep knocking on the door but unable to kick the door in? How about them being in numerous NFC championship games and a Super Bowl appearance and still haven't been able to close the door? And then you're going up against a Lions team that before these playoffs began had one playoff victory since 1957. Nothing was expected of them. And here they come. Here they come roaring in, and they win 2 playoff games, and they find themselves in that NFC Championship game after beating the Rams and the Buccaneers. I think that the Lions are playing with house money. I think they're going to be loose. We know they're a physical team. They can run the football. They can play smash-mouth football. They can throw the football, and they can get after you defensively. I'm going to trust Goff in this situation even more so than Purdy. I think that Purdy's got a lot to overcome. Not to say he can't, but I think he's got a lot more to overcome. I'm going to trust Goff more than him in this situation.
Yeah, so answer is I agree with Stephen A. I say Jared Goff, but it isn't that easy. That's why these sorts of questions set you up to say things that you don't really want to say in the answer. When you look at Brock Purdy, everything should be stacked in his favor. But the one thing that none of us has mentioned truly yet is that without Deebo Samuel, this isn't just a different quarterback.
Right.
This is a different offense. The way that they have to run their offense and who they have to run it through changes. Now, Christian McCaffrey is the best player. Deebo Samuel is the most important piece. The way that he can be utilized in the run game, the way that he can be utilized to change up what you do formationally. And Juwan Jennings is a fine player, but he ain't Deebo Samuel. And so now that makes Brock Purdy take more shots outside. Why? Because it's about personnel.
Yeah.
Now I look for Brandon Ayuk to step up and be the guy. And that's when you get more reckless, because for as much as Brock Purdy can anticipate, for as much as Brock Purdy can be accurate, his arm isn't the strongest arm. And once you get outside of those numbers, that counts. Yeah. That's why a guy like Matthew Stafford, even though he's aging, can play great this year because he can put it wherever he wants to put it. Brock Purdy can't do that. Now, let's think about what the Detroit Lions walk into Santa Clara being able to do. They can run the football with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. You know who had a field day last week? Aaron Jones. What are you going to – you think it was difficult going down, and around, which is bringing the wide receiver down to block the end and pulling 2 tackles against the Packers? Do you know who's pulling for the Detroit Lions? Penei Sewell. And he is headhunting. And Jahmyr Gibbs is a step faster than Aaron Jones. He has that Chris Johnson effect. Let him get in the open field if you want. So what does that happen? That puts Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner in the bind. And what do they like to do from a passing standpoint in Detroit? Play action in between the numbers. The San Francisco 49ers are the best team. The San Francisco 49ers have the better roster. The San Francisco 49ers have the better play calling head coach. And so all of that says, well, damn, Ryan, you should pick Brock Purdy. But I'm not. It's going to be Jared Goff. It's going to be Ben Johnson, and the way that this team plays football as it pertains to this game against the San Francisco 49ers, which is also why I'm picking the Detroit Lions to win.
RC, can are you sure?
No, I'm not sure.
No, listen.
That's why I'd rather talk about what the film says.
I have not finished the question, Mr. Can you allow me to pivot to the full question, sir, please? Are you sure that we can definitively say that San Francisco has the better players?
Yeah.
I'm looking at Detroit.
It's that secondary.
I'm watching them, y'all.
and
Are
the
you
linebackers.
sure?
Yeah. It's closer than people give credit to because
Yes.
you look on the offensive side of the ball, offensive
Yes.
line, running back, receivers, it's where defense that the Lions fall off.
Okay,
dramatic.
fine. I'm talking offensively. Defensively, give it to San
Offensively,
Francisco.
they're the same. Offensively, they're about the same.
I'm like,
McCaffrey-
offensively, I don't see a drop off from the
Yeah.
Detroit Lions.